everyone, welcome to the brand new episode of the Genre Equality Podcast on the Genre Equality channel. My name is Hitzir.
I'm Hadi.
I'm Isa.
This month, so much to talk about, particularly the long-awaited live-action debut of a beloved Neil Gaiman comic on Netflix. We'll be talking about Season 1 of The Sandman, including the bonus episode that dropped last week. Myself and Hadi will be delving into one of our favorite shows on Apple TV+, For All Mankind. We'll all be delving into the Predator prequel entitled Prey. We'll be talking about Jordan Peele's latest thematically dense film, Nope. I'll be reviewing the latest seasons of Tuca Bertie, a Japanese film called Plan 75, Paper Girls, DC League of Super Pets, 1,000 Years of Longing, 3,000 Years of Longing, Westworld, Day Shift, I Am Groot. So much to talk about here, and we can't wait to get right into it. I guess we'll begin, with The Sandman Season 1, which I assume the rest of you have seen too,
Yep.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, I mean, written by Neil Gaiman, the Sandman comic series posits that there is a family of eternal beings more powerful than any god, each with dominion over some crucial aspect of human existence. Its title character, known as Morpheus, is the Lord of Dreams, and through Morpheus, his siblings and their poetic fantasy/adventures, Gaiman spun a genre-defying yarn that helped bring female and LGBTQ readers into comic book shops that had mainly been visited by straight males at that point.
Mm-hmm.
And it also cemented the whole narrative that comics aren't just for kids anymore. Paradigm shift, going on in the 80s and 90s. It was mainly Gaiman and Alan Moore and Frank Miller that has, sort of switched the tone there. And despite years of trying, since the comic ended, the very successful comic, Sandman has stubbornly defied adaptation for decades. Its story too big and ethereal to be condensed into one movie. Its hero, a challenge to make as interesting in 3 dimensions as he is in the form of lines on a page. And, one attempt failed after another. Neil Gaiman grew so frustrated with the process that he began to develop this reputation as a creator who wants all of his work translated as literally as possible. He reportedly had the original showrunners of American Gods, Brian Fuller, replaced because they kept trying to deviate from Gaiman's novel, even though those deviations were pretty much the only parts of that show that worked at all for television. So finally, after all that, Sandman arrived in film version, in a format better suited to hold its expansive narrative, the streaming format, the series format, with Gaiman as a hands-on producer and showrunner. And in many ways, the 10 episodes that are now streaming on Netflix represent, well, actually 11 episodes streaming on Netflix, represent the closest thing possible to bringing Gaiman's earliest Sandman comics to life. And in other ways, it also illustrates why it has taken so long and why sometimes adaptations need to, well, adapt to a different medium. This first season is pretty much a straightforward retelling of the first 2 arcs of the comics, almost slavishly faithful to the text, perhaps in some instances faithful to a fault. Let's begin with you, Isa. What did you think about season 1 of The Sandman and its faithful adaptation?
Oh man, I was at once extremely excited and extremely nervous for this particular production. Right, like Sandman is a big part of my kind of growing up. I've read the graphic novel like many times over, right? Kind of like religiously poring over the pages, studying the art, and just kind of immersing myself like in those stories, right? It's been one of those kind of like cultural things that in my mind for the longest time I believe would be nearly impossible to adapt, just because of the scale of it, and how many of these panels seem to be so difficult, right, to translate into a cinematic medium necessarily. And then, of course, on top of that, like you already mentioned, right, like I really enjoyed season 1 of American Gods.
Yep.
And for the most part, I agreed with most of the changes that were made. I think they it made it a better show necessarily.
Still very
Uh,
minor changes.
yeah, and I didn't think a big deal about that, and I love fuller stuff mostly as well. But to hear what happened, to see what happened in season
Ah.
two,
Mm.
it gave me a bit of cause for concern. Right, I don't want to
Mm.
see Sandman fail. In fact, I want to see Sandman do great things. And I think I wasn't sure when the audiobook came out or the audio play came out, whether or not that meant necessarily that we were one step closer to getting something good on TV or not. Yeah, but for the most part, like really excited, was really really nervous. I remember like my heart was beating really fast as I pressed play when I sat down on Netflix to kind of
Yeah.
watch that. Right, and I like prepared myself for the day. I cleared up my schedule. I just wanted to sit down and make sure like I had a good chunk of time to kind of go through everything. Yeah, and I think most of my kind of like concerns were allayed. I enjoyed it for the most part. I still think that it is not the perfect adaptation, and I don't have an answer of what the perfect adaptation would necessarily be. So I
Yes.
do have some things to kind of like nitpick overall, but like just my initial thoughts, like, oh man, like what a joy it is to kind of like dive into this world again in a completely different medium.
Do you have similar thoughts, Hadi?
More or less similar. Because again, Neil Gaiman is my second favorite author of all time.
Besides Terry Pratchett, like
exactly.
his Good Omens co-author.
Yeah. So, I mean, through Terry Pratchett, I knew Neil Gaiman, lah. And through
Yep.
Neil Gaiman, I get the Sandman, and
Yep.
and all his other works. And so this was again one of those like works where it's very close to your heart. I know we grew up with the Sandman as not that we grew up with it, but rather we read it in our teens, and it kind of gave us a lot of it influenced quite a bit of our growing up, lah.
Yes.
So therefore, not trying to be gatekeeping or anything like that, but you want to make you also want to make sure that you hope that it's something good, lah.
Well, of course, yeah.
So I mean, again, American Gods, the first season, like what I used to say, great stuff, but second season, third season, it went weird,
Yeah.
So
Yes.
that was a cautionary tale, and we have so many cautionary tales, like Avatar, The Last Airbender, the movie, etc., etc., where all these very, very precious, precious IPs, right, get ripped apart, lah, sometimes.
Agreed.
Yeah, but the good thing is that Neil Gaiman was very hands-on, lah. So I feel that not that he's a great showrunner, because he hasn't proven himself to be a very fantastic showrunner, but I think he captured the soul of his comic book character very well in this first season. Yeah.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Agreed. Yeah. Yeah. I, for the most part, in general, very much enjoyed the Sandman season 1. I think I approve of it as a fan. Who knows the source material better than Neil Gaiman?
Exactly.
And I think of all the field adaptations, like you mentioned, like of beloved childhood properties like Avatar, etc., right? The Sandman is far away from that.
Yeah,
It's
thank
not a
God.
failure at all.
Yep.
It's in fact a success, albeit a moderate success in my opinion, because I have a few problems with it. Book 1, Preludes and Nocturnes, the first straight paperback, which everyone will remember, was a weird point at which to start a serialized TV show. Dream spends almost the entire first episode of his own show sitting naked and silent inside a glass cage. And even once he is out and attempting to reclaim all that Burgess took from him, the depth of his loss and the importance of his new quest doesn't really land, because we haven't yet seen him or the Dreaming at their respective peaks. So why, so we don't know. We have no investment in the Dreaming or Dream as a character yet. It feels like the story is starting in the wrong place, only because that's where Gaiman began it as the first time. Morpheus is a challenging character to put at the center of all of this. He is aloof, unknowable, and largely unchanging. None of these are ideal traits in a televised protagonist. The comics got away with it simply because he was so visually striking on the
Exactly.
page.
Yep.
And for large swaths of the comic, Gaiman treated Dream less as the hero of the story
Uh-huh.
than as its host,
Mm.
using him to introduce us to characters far more colorful than Morpheus himself was ever allowed to be.
Mm.
To a degree, the artful magnetism of Dream in the comics could be channeled by the right actor. The character could still be inert and frustrating in many ways, but a performer overflowing with charisma, that he would put into the role could make it work.
Yep.
Tom Sturridge, the star of the show, has the right look.
Yeah, he does.
But I think his performance unfortunately leans into all of Dream's inherent flaws that were already there. That wasn't Sturridge's fault.
Yeah.
It's just
As a it's just those are the flaws of a dramatic leading figure. He is the Rose Walker of charisma. He is a charisma vortex. And don't get me wrong, Sturridge is a really solid talent, but the character would be a challenge for any actor.
Agreed.
The series mostly does better when it comes to the people surrounding Dream because all the characters surrounding Dream are better than Dream. It was that way in the comics, and it was that way in the series. Death, Corinthian, Lucifer, Desire, John Dee, Hop Gadling, all the characters from that standout Diner episode, Animated Cats, Calliope, Richard Maddock, are all more interesting characters to spend time with, and their actors give sublime performances despite the limited screen times. Episodes 5 and 6 are particular highlights. They deliver amazing adaptations of the Sandman's most popular issues, namely 24/7, and then episode 6 was a combo of The Sound of Her Wings plus Man of Good Fortune. And its two-part bonus episode, which adapts A Dream of a Thousand Cats and Calliope, were excellent as well.
Yep.
The former is a cool animated segment featuring a wild assemblage of voice actors. A lot of them were meta Gaiman nods. There was Sandra Oh, there was Joel Lysett, there was David Tennant, there was Michael Sheen, there was James McAvoy, and Neil Gaiman himself. Yeah. Tennant and Sheen, of course, star in Good Omens, while McAvoy played Morpheus in Audible's very good audiobook version of Sandman. But in other episodes outside these 3 episodes of the 11, I feel that the storytelling and the filmmaking is kind of tepid and middling and a bit visually uninspired relative to the artwork in the comic book. That the show lacks the atmosphere and the mood that the comics' rotating array of artists so successfully created. Isa, do you agree with the pros and cons? And if so, expound upon it.
I definitely agree with the standout episodes that you've named, for sure.
Yeah.
100%.
And I think, to me, I agree with the lack of atmosphere, for sure. But for me, what it was, I think in particular very pronounced in the first 3 episodes, right, was the either the choice of pacing or the choice of editing, as far as how quickly each scene was cut into each other, right? And I understand that, yes, we are covering what is supposed to be an immense amount of time in the human world, right? And it is important, because of where Gaiman has chosen to start this series, right? Important to kind of like breeze along that, so we have a better idea of who Morpheus is, even as he is trapped within this prison that has been built around him, right, by Burgess.
Correct.
But every time, for the first 3 episodes, every time there is a scene that I feel is important to linger just a little longer, right, it cuts to something else, right? There isn't enough time for me to settle in or even process the importance of a given scene, at any one point in time, right? And it felt way too quick to move along, even, I mean, not so much like the unimportant aspects of what the story needs at that point in time. But I don't know if it's because, as a fan or as a young adult reading Sandman for the second or third time, that I spent a lot of time lingering on every panel and every page, noticing kind of like every detail, and I was looking for that similar experience. So I think we have the same point, but how it appeared to me was more of like the pacing and the editing than necessarily like the cinematic quality of it. I just wanted to luxuriate a bit. Like, if you've spent this amount of time and this amount of money, like setting up the scene, doing on the shot, all that. Sure, it's not as striking as the inks on the paper, right? Or even like the amazing coloring that we got for some of the panels.
Agreed.
You've spent the time to do all of that. You spent the time to set it up. I want time to be there with this scene, right? If Dream as a necessarily difficult character as a character as concept, right? Like Dreams essentially as stories, and this is a story about stories, then like give me time, right? Give me time to sit with him and like see things, where he is and in his place, or like where he is within the greater story and the context of what's happening around him, right? In a very kind of wide radius. So I totally agree with those two things, right? But when we are given time, and I think noticeably it is in episode 5 that for once we settle in a space and we settle on a group of characters, and we are given time to just spend there because we are stuck there with the characters, right, in 24/7. That it really feels like the series comes to what I am looking for in a Sandman adaptation. It's just all these things, like, and then when we go, because we get that episode and then we go into the Sound of Her Wings, right? Even though that feels more I don't know if episodic is the right word, because like on his journey with his sister, he's going from person to person, right?
It's a different story altogether already.
Yeah, it's a different story altogether, but like it feels much more grounded, right, than the first 4 episodes that we got.
Sure.
And I mean, episode 4, I found it interesting just because in the back of my mind, I'm just like, you know what, Gwendolyn Christie's Lucifer, and I'm not sure what the name of the actress is who plays Mazepin, right? I want the Gaiman Lucifer as a future adaptation, right? I'm talking about the bartender one, not the trash one that we've been watching over the last couple of years.
Hey, come on, Tom Ennis does a good job, okay?
No, he does a great job for what that show is. I still want something else, right? Like,
I mean, that's the reason why they couldn't bring him in, right?
Which is unfortunate. But I think Gwendolyn Christie did a great job, and I think for that particular episode, like, I will forgive like some of the like pacing qualities, just because at that point there is a counterpoint to Morpheus, right? Like the indelibility of Morpheus, his almost like strange vagueness of being, is counterpointed by something that's very solid and very real, right? By Gwendolyn Christie's Lucifer.
Sorry, it's Mazepin. Mazepin is a F1 driver last time.
Yes,
Mazepin of the Lilin.
Yes. So I think I definitely do agree with you on that point, but maybe for me it just came about in a very different way for the first couple of episodes in particular.
Okay. What about you, Hadi?
Honestly, I kind of understand where you all are coming from. There is, I mean, some episode feels very quick, right? Like we're just rushing from a point to another point.
Yeah.
Especially the last few episodes. But man, I loved the just scenes scattered throughout all the episodes where it just caught your attention. Like I feel nearly every episode has that one scene. Like episode 4 is definitely the battle, right?
Yeah.
Between Lucifer and Morpheus. Then 24/7 is just the whole that whole gruesome thing at the end, lah.
Yes.
And then episode 6, you episode 6 had like 2 stories, right? There was the story where he goes back to find the friend, right?
Yeah, Death and Hop Gatling. They were separate issues that were combined together, which I thought was a very smart choice.
Exactly. Me too.
Yeah.
And I love that ending where he was late, lah. And the guy is still alive. The guy doesn't want to die. He still doesn't want to die, because they really got the wrong guy to give that gift to. Because Morpheus is right. A lot of us after 100 years will be like, can you end it now?
Yeah.
But it's also a beautiful subversion of the immortality story, which always tells us that nobody really wants to be immortal. Is that really true? Because I have always doubted all those cautionary tales. Because I feel like Hop Gatling, I don't think there is enough time in the world to experience everything.
Yeah, and the guy went through a century of everything, success, ups and downs, and all that, to this, coming to this like kind of like nice center space, I guess. you know.
Yeah.
And like it's very different from like Lord of the Rings, you know, where you had like Bilbo Baggins, you know, who had lived a long life and felt very thin, like spread the famous line where, you know, like spread thin over bread, you know,
Yeah.
that kind of thing. Yeah. So that's a great thing lah. I love the all, you know, the characters, secondary characters around Rose Walker. I think they're
Mm.
brilliantly done and all that. I think casting wise, right, I think this show does, I think, a near perfect job in the casting.
Okay.
Near
Yeah.
near perfect. Like, I wouldn't say everybody's perfect for it.
Okay.
But like that serial killer seminar convention,
Convention.
Yeah.
brilliantly done. Like, you know, you had Stephen Fry's character Gilbert, right?
Yeah.
Beautifully acted, you know, when he fucking realized where he was.
Mm.
Yeah, whatever it is, yeah. There are definite flaws in the first season.
Yeah.
But I still think I enjoy this adaptation a lot.
Mhm.
And I don't mind. I mean, there's going to be a second season, right?
Not
I
sure.
mean,
It's
they
not
haven't
confirmed.
confirmed it, lah. But you know, if they do confirm it, I'm quite excited to see what they can do with it, lah.
Yeah.
Especially so because we have gotten past some of the rougher aspects
Yeah,
of the Sandman story.
exactly.
Yeah.
I think Gaiman himself has stated several times that for the first 6 months of Sandman, he didn't know what the book was. He didn't know what Sandman was about, and he only started to find his footing after The Sound for Wings.
Yep.
And much like what Sandman said, the show also found its footing after The Sound for Wings.
Yeah.
The only issue is that, you know, if you knew that your first 6 issues were not that great and you could have changed it, why didn't you for a totally different medium?
Yeah.
You know?
I think just wanted to
but
be, you know, true to the source material, that kind of thing, lah.
but beholden to yourself.
I don't know.
Okay.
To the fans, I guess, you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah. I mean, like, I think overall, you know, like alongside Alan Moore's Watchmen, like I said, The Sandman has long been held up as the comic book least suited for
Television.
transplantation into any medium,
Yeah.
not only television or anything. And I think Zack Snyder did a faithful adaptation of the plot of Watchmen in a 2009 film that completely missed the point, politics, themes, and social commentary of the Watchmen.
Yeah.
On the flip side, Damon Lindelof's 2019 HBO series, on the other hand, often deviated wildly, continued on, and was speculative. But it ultimately felt much truer to the experience of reading Sandman,
Yep.
of reading Watchmen. I'm
Yes.
sorry.
Absolutely.
I think, likewise, I felt that maybe the Sandman needed a Damon Lindelof to reinterpret the text for a different age and a different medium. It doesn't need to be a radical reinterpretation.
Yeah.
It doesn't need to be 2019 Watchmen. It just needs to be a little bit different. I've said it a lot, but I feel that faithful adaptations are stupid and boring. Why would I bother to watch the exact same story play out when I can just reread the original material? An adaptation should offer a twist, a reinterpretation, a unique slant of the original material. Because if not, what is the point? There are too many elements of the show that I feel don't make sense in the context of TV, all in an effort to faithfully reproduce something that was designed to appear in another format
Yeah.
30 years ago. The series, I think, for me,
Shit,
gets
30 years,
a gets a pass because of episodes 5, 6, and 11. They offer some of the most moving, interesting TV stories of 2022.
It is.
But I think otherwise, your mileage may vary, in my opinion. So,
Yep.
with that in mind, what are your final thoughts and ratings, Isa?
Oh yeah, so I had a hard time kind of deciding that, right? Like, as a fan and just kind of like my overall enjoyment, I was tempted to give it like an 8 maybe. But honestly, the entire Dream Vortex like arc, right? I was very bored. It just didn't appeal to me. It wasn't as interesting as it was on the panels and the pages of the graphic novel. Again, I agree with you. The standout episodes are truly kind of like outstanding pieces of TV. I'm gonna go for a 6.5, right? Because like overall, I enjoyed that. But I do think it's a solid basis for like a season 1, and I hope they continue to work on all the other great stuff that's coming on later on. But there were just parts of it that really kind of took me out of like the experience that I desired from a Sandman TV series.
Okay.
What about you, Hadi?
I'm a bit more lenient on this. I think I'm giving it about 7.5 out of 10.
Okay. Okay.
I really enjoy the portrayal of Morpheus most of the time. I enjoy the portrayal of a lot of this. I feel that the introduction of all the many characters that, as the episode goes by, I think it's done very well most of the time. Um, I had my issues aren't that. I feel aren't really as serious as you and Hidze. I feel I enjoyed this a lot more for some reason, but maybe it's just that maybe just because it felt that it was not bad, right? So therefore I'm relieved also.
Yeah.
I understand.
Yeah. So yeah, I think a 7.5 for me lah.
Okay. I would give it a 6 out of 10 for me. For similar reasons to Isa.
Yeah.
So overall, I think we all liked the show
We
to
did.
various degrees.
Yeah.
None of us thought it was great, but we thought it was good. I think Hadi on the high end and me on the lower end, but we all about have the same thoughts. So yeah, go check out the Sandman on Netflix. I feel like it deserves a second season for sure because there's only the good stuff from now.
Oh yeah,
so
I agree.
yeah, we've like I said, we've gotten past the rough stuff, and like all the issues after this are all of Men of Good Fortune, Calliope, that kind of quality,
Yeah.
and we can look forward to that in season 2. Unfortunately, it's a very expensive show,
It
Oh
is.
yeah.
and as we know that Netflix is downsizing in a bit, so it's still up in the air whether or not Netflix will greenlight a season 2 because the ratings are good, but not is it good enough to justify that price tag?
Yeah.
Who knows?
I hope so.
I hope so as well. Yeah. Next up, we're moving on to season 3 of For All Mankind. Apple TV Plus's For All Mankind is a show that makes me remember what I loved so much about TV in the first place. It seamlessly balances science fiction and period drama, understated storytelling, and pulpy soap opera beats. I have screamed for joy watching For All Mankind as if I myself was in mission control
Exactly.
and had a hand in landing spaceships to distant planets. I have howled in laughter. I have leapt out of my chair and paced around the room out of sheer tension. For All Mankind is one of those few shows on television that consistently surprises me with both its spectacular set pieces and its determination to never leave a plot line behind, for better or for worse. For the uninitiated, because it's such a small scale show, a lot of people don't watch it. I'm gonna give you a brief recap about what it is about.
Let's go.
For All Mankind takes place in an alternate timeline where the Soviets put the first man on the moon, triggering a never-ending space race and a cascade of other political, technological, and social changes from the history we all know. The first 2 seasons dealt with US versus USSR tensions, and then outright fighting on the lunar surface in season 2. The new season jumps ahead to the early 1990s and a new frontier as 3 separate groups now compete to see who will be the first to reach Mars, the new goalpost. We got NASA, we got Russia, and then we got a third wild card, a tech company called Helios, a private company whose enigmatic founder, Dev Ayesa, an Elon Musk type CEO, has long been fascinated with space. And in the course of trying to beat their rivals to the Red Planet, each group finds itself cutting corners and putting lives and resources at the risk. For All Mankind has no such competition. It is the only show of its kind on air. It's not just that its second season was one of the best TV shows of last
It
year.
was.
Is that no other drama on TV is working in the same creative, for lack of a better term, space. It's science fiction,
Alt history.
but it's also a workplace drama. And it's also an alt history, like you said, a fascinating look at the many roads not taken in history in the final third of the 20th century. It's also a spy thriller. It's also an action show. And most of all, it's also a big populist crowd pleaser. Seasons 1 and 2 were very much an alt history. Season 3 is out and out science fiction. For one, there is the whole going to Mars thing, something that no human being on Earth has been able to accomplish as of yet, but they did in 1994 in the show. Additionally, the season opens with space tourism, one aspect that while we are getting closer to, we are not there just yet.
Nope, we're the
For all
nascent stages
mankind,
only.
absolutely. And For All Mankind opens in 1992 in the first space hotel orbiting Earth.
Yep.
And eventually fast forwards into 1994 when all three space agencies are ready to go to Mars. Although, key point here, the Soviets and the Americans had originally planned to go in 1996. You know, what is so great about For All Mankind is that it never skims on gorgeous sci-fi spectacle or the human drama or the intriguing political and technological what ifs.
Yep.
And season 3 continues in that vein. What do you think, Hadi, about season 3?
Season 3 again builds on the success of the first 2 seasons.
Very much so, yes.
The hard science is something that the hard science fiction is very well done.
It's a bit less hard in season 3.
Yeah, I mean, because you have to take a lot of creative liberties, but it's still based on a lot of science that NASA has theorized.
Of course.
with its journey to Mars.
It's much harder than Star Trek or Star Wars or the Orville, the Expanse.
It's just like light travel, it's still impossible, which is good lah.
Correct. All the stuff in For All Mankind is theoretically possible with current technology.
Yeah, and the experiment. I mean, the technology is just in papers right now, like in the real life, lah. In studies and all that, in theories. So these are what happened when the theories become reality, lah. So good for them.
And also stuff that already exists now, like Zoom and touchscreen phones. They just push it up to the 90s.
Yeah, it's just that in this out history, we have technology like fusion, where therefore nuclear technology is a lot safer, blah blah blah, and all that. But what I really love is that due to the finding of helium-3 on the moon and mining of helium-3, which is this miracle element, essentially miracle fuel.
Yep.
It has caused the Soviet Union not to collapse, because now they also have enough money to continue their regime. In our history, obviously, that they ran out of money because of crazy programs. Their crazy space program was sucking up so much money because they're trying to catch up with America.
Correct.
But in this case, they found helium-3, they shared helium-3 together, and we have 2 very prosperous, albeit different what we call it, political systems.
Yes.
Yeah, and one of the beautiful things about it, apart from all these big huge ideas, ideology all this stuff, right, is the characters themselves. I feel are very strong. We have the evolution of Karen, who was like a housewife in season 1, who was tending a bar at one point, who is now a CFO of the third, that's the tech company, right?
Yes.
Who actually launched the hotel.
She became an entrepreneur.
Exactly, with her second husband, anyway. And then you have your stalwarts like
Ed,
who's still the same. Like I feel went through the least character development.
What do you mean least? There was zero character development.
He still shouts and he's still the angry white guy,
And his keep in mind, right, that the Ed we know right now is not the 30-year-old Ed we met 3 years ago.
No, it's a 60-year-old Ed.
And he looks the same. And I thought that was the least believable part of For All Mankind until I started thinking about Tom Cruise.
Yep, exactly. And
then I was like,
and also
maybe not lah.
Yeah, exactly. And not only that, but you must understand this guy keeps his fitness up. But not only that, he also takes a lot of steroids.
Yeah, dude, the guy is pumping HGH in his ass like every episode.
Exactly. The first episode, we saw him jab his butt with the PhD, most probably.
Every episode.
Exactly. So therefore, why he's still, in such good shape. But then, you have your characters like Danny, who has a weird tangent storyline and all that stuff. Whatever it is, it's not only the overarching plot that is, like going to Mars and all that, but really it is the gritty, like, office drama between the astronauts, between the people in flight control and all that, which is the most interesting things that's happening.
Agreed.
Yeah, and that is something that they balance really well, because at the end of it, you really want to see them land in Mars. You really want to see who wins the race and all that stuff. Surprise twist at the end in episode 9.
Sure.
The best.
Don't say that.
I won't say, but like it's so mind blowing. So anyway, yeah. So yeah. So all that, right? How they tie all that in, right, is so beautifully done. And and kudos to Apple TV, man. I think this is their second best TV series after Severance.
Agreed. I'm surprised you didn't say Ted Lasso, which is number 3, I
Ted
think.
Lasso is different. Ted Lasso is number 3 for me lah. I mean that one is more hard, you know.
Yeah. But correct. So that's the correct answer. Yeah. Yeah. I think like all the intriguing political, technological, and social stuff only hits as hard as it does because of the time the writers have invested in the show's characters.
Yes.
Like you said, we have followed Daniel Poole, who was the token black pilot on NASA, back in the 60s, and she's now the bona fide leader in space exploration.
Yeah,
like she's
man.
number 1. Ellen Wilson, the fresh-faced, closeted lesbian, is now the fucking president of the United States.
Yeah, beating Clinton.
In an interesting presidential race, which I didn't expect to see in season 3. And it also explores the question, what would happen to America, not just with its first woman president in the 90s, again, something we haven't done yet still today, but also a lesbian, and how would that change America's perception of homosexuality way back in the 90s? We've seen Margot Madison, as we already talked about her in Americans. Also, she's made the journey from being the first lady allowed to do calculations in mission control to the woman in charge of all of NASA, and in a weird crossover with the Americans, also now an unwitting spy for the KGB. And following these characters over the decades doesn't just give us an opportunity to see how they've all grown, but how sometimes they've all stayed the same, like Ed Baldwin. For All Mankind, season 3 delivers more of what made its excellent season 2 so thrilling.
Yeah.
There are life and death situations where only a combination of badass daring do and math can save the day. Characters come to physical and verbal blows over long brewing secrets. There are moments of ecstatic reunion and one bittersweet new romance. Watching Zoom calls and the elimination of fossil fuels and stuff like that in the 90s is fucking wild. If there's one spot though, where For All Mankind might frustrate viewers, it's the soap opera beats with the Stevens kids.
Yeah, man.
We all remember Gordo and Tracy and the season 2 finale, probably the greatest moment on Apple TV history. First, we have Danny, who is still pining over Karen, getting addicted to painkillers on Mars. It leads to gross moments of incompetence that have dire consequences. Then we have Jimmy, who falls in with some proto-QAnon types who disbelieve NASA and, the manner of Tracy and Gordo's heroic deaths. Season 3 also, in my opinion, does too many time jumps.
Yeah.
Honestly, the plot of this season could and maybe should have stretched for 2 or 3 seasons. I rarely complain when a show goes too fast, but For All Mankind goes too fast.
Dude.
It is in such a hurry to get to the next plot line, the next exciting milestone, that the stuff in the middle, the process of how it all gets done, and the emotions of the characters during the process gets overlooked sometimes.
Agreed.
Do you agree, Hadi?
Agreed. That's one of the complaints I had. We were suddenly there was a huge jump between 1992 to 1994.
Yeah.
Then from 1994, then they jumped months at a time.
6 months, 9 months,
Yeah.
6 months, yeah.
And then they jumped again for years by the end, right?
Oh, the time jump at the end is consistent with season 1 and 2.
It's end of decade jump lah. But the months jump was the irritating one. That 5 months, for example, when from the accident to the recovery.
Yeah.
I feel that there was a lot more that they could explore, perhaps. And among the other things, like the 2-year jump, for example, I felt could stretch 3 episodes.
Absolutely.
Yeah, where you can really discuss not discuss, but rather you can engineer a lot of stories within that 2 years of how did they end up there in racing towards Mars.
That 2-year jump could have been its own season.
Agreed. So that I felt was one of the things that season 3 might have overlooked that was a bit too fast.
Kind of flawed.
I agree with you there. I agree with you.
Agreed. Yeah. Overall, though, I think For All Mankind is still very good TV. It's again, it keeps the trend of every last 2 episodes of For All Mankind is fucking mind blowing.
It is.
They end their seasons with massive swings. Genuinely, the last 2 episodes kind of broke my brain a bit, and Ronald D. Moore is so unafraid to go big with left field twists that I can't fault him when some of the twists are not good. Like, I appreciate ambition rather than you playing safe.
Sure.
And this is a very ambitious show
Mm-hmm.
that takes a lot of risks. And sometimes they don't pay off, but sometimes they do. And I appreciate that.
Yeah.
This is a fascinating, underrated show that offers a science fiction alternate history on top of great storylines, on top of great VFX,
Yeah.
mostly strong characters and well-written episodes.
Mhm.
It all works together seamlessly without feeling like storylines are being sacrificed in the name of spectacle.
Sure.
If you liked the first two seasons, the third keeps up the momentum despite some narrative missteps. It's a 7.5 out of 10 for me. What about you, Hadi?
7.5 out of 10 sounds good. I think I'll rate that. I'll rate it at that as well. 7.5. Yeah.
Okay.
I enjoyed it as
Okay.
much as I enjoyed Sandman, I guess.
Sure. Okay. I mean, I think almost, I have this like headcanon thing, but I think For All Mankind is a prequel to The Expanse.
It does feel like that, right?
And like every season keeps confirming this, like they keep adding more and more details.
Especially
to it.
like what's
And I'm
happening
like,
in Mars right now.
yeah, and like obviously, like into the 2000s, the militarization of Mars and everything. Sure, yeah. Why can't this be the prequel to For All Mankind?
Yeah.
Sorry, to The Expanse. Yeah, it's great, and I'm gonna keep thinking that until they prove me
Exactly.
wrong.
But can we do a bit of spoilers, please? I want to talk about it so much.
Please go ahead. Spoiler warning in 3, 2, 1.
Fucking North Korea was the first to Mars.
And nobody knew. Yeah, that's
What the fuck was that?
so for Isa who doesn't watch the show. So on episode 9, they were trying to find a spare rover, an unmanned probe
Yeah.
to
They have
fix
a part that they need, lah.
a part that they need, essentially, like forget all the techno babble. So they go to the unmanned probe, only to realize that it was a manned probe. There's a North Korean in there, and he's been there since before they were. North Korea beat Russia and the US to Mars.
So what's insane was that, okay, because they were fixing a part that needed a Russian part, but the Russian part was lost in space. So the only closest thing is North Korea, who copies Russian technology. So therefore they went to the North Korean probe, and there was a North Korean astronaut.
Oh my god.
Who's been there for like
Months
before they were, And it absolutely, like in episode 9, right, it negated all the previous 8 episodes. The entire race to Mars was for naught. They did nothing. Nobody was first.
Nobody.
Oh my god.
So, and also there was this whole Chekhov's gun, they showed Chekhov's gun in episode 1 actually, when they said that the North Korean space, they were making fun of the North Korean space technology, they were failing to launch their rockets properly. The rockets were exploding on launch, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And
Chekhov's No Korea.
And suddenly there was this North Korean in Mars, and he was, and I think Hidze hit it with the best line. I think was that you said that this is more surprising than finding aliens on Mars.
I didn't want to spoil it to Hardy because Hardy hadn't seen the episode at the time, so I texted him.
Yeah.
Like the end of episode 9 will blow your mind. It is legitimately more shocking than finding an alien. If they found an alien on Mars, right, that would be shocking. But finding a North Korean on Mars is even more shocking.
It was hilarious. But one more last spoiler is the one that they blasted off a pregnant woman,
on the top of a space shuttle.
What?
They strapped her down with duct tape. I mean, like that's actually survivable according to like all the videos that I've watched. But the baby would not have survived.
There will be no baby.
There will be no baby. She gave birth immediately after that, so good for her.
But it's hilarious because literally she's just strapped on, and there's a rocket behind her. Okay.
Yeah,
that was it.
It was like from Wile E. Coyote type of thing, Yeah.
I love this show so much, but there was so much science behind it to get to that point, though. Like the engineers were all like rushing and getting all this, and then like this one engineer, it was what's his name? The girl engineer lah. She was like
Almeida.
It was like
Leader.
Yeah, Leader. Where she was like, why not strap a rocket behind her?
Oh my god!
I love this show. This show is the best.
I watch a reaction channel to this show. It's the only reaction channel out there that reacts to For All Mankind. It's a channel called Celestial Citizens by two girls. One is an engineer for a private aeronautical company, and the other is an engineer for NASA. And shockingly, as I watch them react to this, they said that was actually scientifically feasible.
Yep.
Like this was a thing that can be done. They just wouldn't advise anyone to do it. So I was actually shocked that For All Mankind was like. I thought this was the most like furthest they've gone from real science,
No, but
and it turns out that it's not.
I told you they do a lot of research. Like
Yeah.
honestly, this show does so much like theoretical research, just taking theories and making it in reality, lah. You know, because that's what you
Yeah.
can do with a TV show, lah.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
yeah. It takes the one step further than The Martian, lah.
Yeah, man.
Yeah,
Yeah. Recommended, highly recommended. Go and watch For All Mankind if you haven't watched it yet.
Absolutely. Let's move on to something on Disney Plus right now, or Hulu if you live in America. Let's talk about Prey, which is a prequel to the Predator franchise. And since its debut in 1987, the Predator franchise has had, shall we say, an uneven history. The premise is brilliant in its simplicity. A race of cool-looking aliens with dreadlocks and high-tech weapons who live for nothing more than hunting. They travel to Earth in search of prey. It worked particularly well for the first two films, but over the course of more sequels, spin-offs,
Reboots.
forays into games and reboots and comics, the idea and the mythology has become so convoluted that it diluted the magic of Predator to a breaking point. Now, what makes this latest installment so refreshing is that it's a lean, mean return, a back to basics approach, focusing on what makes the franchise.
Yup.
Yeah.
A cool looking alien hunting motherfuckers. That's all we ever wanted.
Exactly.
I mean, I appreciate mythology and world building as much as the next guy,
Yeah.
but don't forget about the hunt, guys. That's the key
The whole
to
point.
the franchise.
Yeah.
The title is Predator. Anyways, this new Predator, or prequel to Predator called Prey, is set in 1719, and it stars Amber Midthunder, who you might remember from Legion, as Naru, a member of the Comanche Nation tribe who longs to be taken seriously as a skilled and fierce warrior. Determined to prove her worth, Naru sets out to hunt an unidentifiable creature living on the northern Great Plains. However, Naru soon discovers that the prey that she's stalking is a bloodthirsty alien armed with all manner of advanced weaponry who hunts for sport and glory.
Yep.
And it has Naru, her Comanche brethren, and other Great Plain dwellers in its crosshair. Cue Naru fighting for her survival amidst the numerous obstacles put in her way, Predator included, in a thematic coming of age. Narratively, Prey doesn't deviate from the Predator series' tried and tested plot formula. Basic as the blueprint sounds in 2022, the simplicity of Prey's story is what makes it effective.
Yeah.
The plot is concise and cohesive in its approach, and it forgoes extraneous story beats to tell a plot that primarily focuses on its two leads, Naru and the Predator. That's all you need. One of the most impressive things about Prey is how patient it is, especially for an action movie.
Yeah.
The pacing is reminiscent of the original Predator, arguably the high mark of the franchise, right?
Yeah.
You don't even see the alien until about an hour in, and up until that point, it remains cloaked and invisible, poking around the edges of the plains in search of a worthy opponent. It terrorizes the humans in brief flashes of violence. That's not to say there's no action until then, because there definitely is. And once you get there, it's particularly gruesome and gory. But the film does an incredible job of slowly teasing out the main conflict. This is your main event. You don't give it away on like a random brawl, like pardon, but like Naru and the alien will get into it eventually, but you gotta save it till the end.
Yeah.
And Prey forces you to wait for that moment, making the final showdown all the more satisfying.
Like the first
And
Predator.
it helps. Like the first Predator, and it helps that the Predator is especially menacing here, played by that tall basketball dude, right?
Vin D'Allegro.
Yeah.
Yeah. Good job by that guy. Let's begin with you, Isa. What do you think about Prey?
Oh man, I enjoyed this so much because like you again, like Hideo already said, right? Like it's so simple. Give me the hunt, right? Give me the hunt. That is what I want. And as much as like I think Predator 2 was an interesting take on like where it might possibly go by moving everything into like a city kind of urban junglescape and all of that. And while as a kid I really enjoyed the first Alien vs Predator game because
Yeah,
it
me
was
too.
terrifying to play as a marine with aliens on one side and predators hunting you at the same time.
Yep.
You know, like a lot of these things are kind of extraneous, right? Like the moment we head into like AVP territory, I'm just like, okay, whatever.
Don't make that into a movie, and both
Yeah,
movies
it's
are suck.
fine. You know, certainly we can Spartan handshake across species, and you know, the universal sign for explosions is the same thing all over the universe. But Prey really emphasizes on what we are there to look for, right? Even though we don't get to see the monster or the predator much later in the scene, right? Every part of the process of the hunt is we have a stand-in for that in Naru, right? And her brother and the rest of the tribe, right? Where there's the stalking and there's the actual hunt and the actual kill, and everything takes its time. And it also takes the time to set up all the things that are necessary while dropping all these phenomenal, you know, wing or not nods to fans of the franchise as they go about all of that. In its action moments, it is brutal, absolutely brutal. They do not shy away from showing like just the strength and, you know, the power that comes with a predator warrior and all of that, right? Like they make it the power scaling is perfect in my opinion, right? Like honestly, there's very little chance in hell that Naru, without using her brains, would be able to beat something like that.
Hell yeah.
You know, and I think people forget that despite the fact that Ani and his very muscle out bunch of comrades, as strong as they looked, at the end of the day, that wasn't what won them the fight or won
Wasn't.
Arnold the fight, right? At the beginning. It was, you know, it was the intelligent use of the terrain, right? To be able to see that and all the little points in time whereby she learns those things in a very almost process driven, very method way of going about.
Trial and error.
Yeah, trial and error, right? Wow, I love it. Like it appeals to me if in the way that, you know, some of the serials that we've talked about are, right, the whole like, okay, this is the process, this is what happens, this is how I would come to this conclusion.
Yep.
And then the fight is such a great payoff because of those moments, right?
Exactly.
The pacing was fantastic. There were moments in time where the stakes, even without a predator, felt high, like in particular when she falls into the bog with the
Oh
quicksand.
yeah.
I held my breath for a good moment, right, when that happened, because it, despite the fact, you know, okay, look, there's another hour runtime here, right? Like she's not gonna die, you know, but that felt like kind of significant enough, and I had been invested enough at that point in time in her succeeding and surviving, so we can get to the fight.
Exactly.
That like even something so simple as that, as like treacherous terrain, you know, felt significant enough. So like I think Amber Mid Thunder did a great job, you know, as just kind of like I guess her first outing in a real action thing. I don't know if her role in Legion was necessarily the same vein of that. But yeah, I thoroughly enjoyed that. I think there was enough about like these like super traditional hunting methods, you know, and just kind of the kind of life that they would have living on the Great Plains. Enough detail there to like make it full and interesting while keeping the premise just solid and like straightforward and to the point.
Yeah. What about you, Hadi?
Whoa. First of all, right, I mean, I agree with everything that Isa said. To add on, right, I really like the accuracy of the period. A lot of research was actually put into that, like from like the Native American standpoint.
Yes.
The whole like one of the things that Prey didn't have were like horse riding,
Yep.
and then they added horse riding because, you know, it was part of Comanche culture, lah.
Yeah.
You know, and that kind of like attention to detail, lah, you know, to the prints, to all the things you saw the Native Americans were using, like from the toothbrush and all that they used, all were period accurate and all. So I like that kind of detail, you know.
Yep. Absolutely.
I appreciate that kind of detail. To their weapons also. Okay, so one of the things that really impressed me, I feel, was the way that they went back to the basics of what Predator works. Right?
Yeah.
The monster shouldn't be seen as much as possible.
Mhm.
It's good that he is invincible most of the time lah. So you can't really see, you only see like silhouettes of him most
Yeah.
of the time. And that final reveal was so good that and again, it's a very unique predator because you've never seen this predator before with
Yep.
that kind of more older looking mask.
Yeah.
With and this predator feels more visceral. He has less armor on. It's more,
Mhm.
it's more like he's trying to be in the element as well.
Yeah.
With using as minimal technology as required, like I guess whatever lah. But that's what you can feel like he was trying to challenge himself. That was
Yeah.
what he was going out in power levels as well with the creatures, killing the wolf, killing the bear, trying to find what was the greatest predator on Earth lah.
Mhm.
He might have been the first lah, whatever lah. Sure.
Well,
But
I'm hoping Prey wipes out all the other nonsense about them coming much earlier in our timeline.
yeah, the one where they dug a hole into the Arctic Circle and all that, right?
Yeah. Fuck that. Seriously.
Fuck that shit. Yeah. Then one more thing that I thought was really cool was Naru's brother's last stand.
Ooh, yes.
That was actually a tribute to the Predator when the Native American soldier had his last stand as well.
Mm-hmm.
So the thing is, spoiler alert lah, their ancestors. That is his ancestor.
Yeah, I assumed he was Comanche.
Yeah.
Like they didn't do it like by accident.
So Naru's brother is actually a direct ancestor of that guy lah.
Oh,
Sure.
In
I wasn't
Predator
aware of
1.
that.
Yeah, I just found out also.
Damn.
So I was like, damn, that's interesting, right? And and it's not shot for shot, but then it has that same feel. And therefore it just adds a bit of world building into the first Predator.
Yeah.
Where they said that when the guy's last stand, right, why he was like suddenly in this trance, right, was because he was remembering when his people first fought the Predator.
Yeah.
I just love that. It's ridiculous, but I love that. I mean, this is all the little details that I really like, and I think help the film because of how simple the film is.
Mhm.
It doesn't burden you with with weird narratives, with things that we have to remember and all that. It's a very simple story of a hunt gone wrong lah for the Predator because it really gone wrong for him lah.
Yeah.
So
I guess overall, like echoing Hardy, the film must be praised for capturing Comanche traditions, language, and culture in authentic detail. I would highly recommend you watch the Comanche dub over the English version. In fact, the decision to hire almost exclusively Native American and First Nation talent in front of and behind the screen is proof of the filmmaker's desire to faithfully represent the indigenous people and their way of life.
confused.
Yeah.
Prey makes every effort to reproduce the Comanche society on screen as truthfully as possible, which is great. And overall, Prey has a good combat sequences.
Yeah.
It's violent and surprisingly poignant and simplistic but effective. Prey is the best Predator movie since the 1987 original.
100%.
Oh yeah.
It packs plenty into its 95-minute runtime, simultaneously honoring the Predator films that have come before while freshening things up for a whole new audience. It's a bit derivative and the plot may seem
is.
too simple for some, but it's a strength for me.
Same.
Yeah.
And I think that this is an entertaining sci-fi flick that Predator fans have spent the last 30 plus years hunting for.
Yeah.
So this is a 7.5 out of 10 for me. What about you, Isa?
Oh man, yeah, I'm gonna give it a 7 out of 10 as well. Just like everything I want in a Predator film, right? Like go back to the basics. Give me something. You go back to the basics and you give me something new at the same time, right? And like you just stick to that, and then give it lots of love and attention and detail. I'm down. I thoroughly enjoyed this as for what it is, right? There was no need to complicate it anywhere past that.
Yeah.
Yeah. about you,
Same. But I'll give it a 8 for me.
Oh, nice. Okay. All right. Next, I'm moving on to the first portion of Quick Hits. So I'll be talking about some films and TV shows that my co-hosts have not seen. First off, I'm going to be talking about season 3 of Tuca and Bertie. Tuca and Bertie is one of my favorite TV shows, animated or not, right now on TV. The absurdity of adulting as a millennial continues to fuel the zaniness of Tuca and Bertie. It's created by BoJack Horseman's Lisa Hannawalt, and this absurdist animated comedy blends both drama and humor, tackling complex subjects like addiction and mortality, anxiety, and sexual assault through the lens of an anthropomorphic animal society. And there's plenty more fodder to play with in season 3 as the show expands its cast of characters and storylines surrounding its titular duo. For those of us who enjoy watching the friendship play out between the chaotic good energy of Tuca, who's played by Tiffany Haddish, and the nervous, neutral, anxious vibe of Bertie, played by Ali Wong, this latest batch of episodes is truly a delight. It follows the flood that served as the season's 2 climactic finale, the one that all but decimated Bird Town. And we first meet our dynamic duo with their respective roles reversed. Tuca is thriving as a chatty tour guide alongside the new waterways that dominate the town's cityscape, and Bertie finds herself floundering as a budding baking entrepreneur. It doesn't help that Bertie's boyfriend Speckle, voiced by Stephen Yeun, is also moving up in the world, helping to rebuild the city with a focus on affordable housing. Because yes, even though this is a bonkers show that loves to revel in its own craziness, it's a world where a toucan can date a fig tree,
Sure.
voiced by Matthew Reese from The Americans. But that does not mean that it won't comment on pressing modern issues. Everything from the cliche of girl bossing to America's broken healthcare system to alcoholism are handled with a levity that feels neither cheap nor exploitative. There's no denying that Tuca and Bertie is at its best when it focuses on the odd couple at the heart of the show. Female friendship is what anchors Hannah Walt's colorful, animal-fueled dreamscape of a show. Even as the two birds struggle to help one another, the love and care they have for each other guides them unconditionally towards their shared goal of merely making it through the day, depicting a world that is clearly crumbling all around them and a system that seems designed to exploit their every kindness. The Adult Swim series reminds us that we should cherish and nurture the relationships around us, even or especially those that push us outside our comfort zones. It has quirky character designs, mile-a-minute puns, sight gags, and an even zanier sense of humor this season. The Tuca and Bertie remains an oddball delight, which is why I'm giving this an 8.5 out of 10. Next up is a film called Plan 75. Plan 75 is set in modern day Japan. No future here. It's set today in modern day Japan. And the film opens when the government has unveiled a modest but monstrous proposal to address the country's aging demographic crisis. Under the innocuously named Plan 75, senior citizens, 75 years and above, are encouraged to sign up for a voluntary euthanasia program.
What?
It's all made very easy for them. There are sales reps to guide people through the process and a call center to provide emotional support. Those who enroll are given a 100,000 yen handout so that they can make the most of their final weeks of life. And they can opt for mass cremation to avoid the expense of a funeral. This film by Chi Hayakawa puts a realistic spin on dystopian scenarios of 1970s sci-fi movies, and it's all the more chilling for it. Caught up in this web are various denizens of different ages and occupations. There is Maria, who is an empathetic Filipina migrant worker who leaves her job in elder care, where she takes care of old people, for a higher paying work with Plan 75 in order to raise funds for her daughter's heart surgery. There's Hiromu, who is a young clerk who believes his work with Plan 75 is a benevolent social service up until his estranged uncle shows up at his desk one day. At the film's heart, though, is Michiko, who is a spunky, independent senior who turns to Plan 75 as the last option after facing discrimination, age discrimination, that causes her to lose both her home and her job. So she has no other options. She figures, why not take the handout and I'm going to die in a few weeks? Why not? Through the journeys of these characters, Plan 75 delivers something at once harrowing in its ambience, humane at its core, and hard-hitting in its critique against the ageist mores of a cold, pragmatic society. It is tender and devastatingly unsentimental. Chi Hayakawa's film is a plea for empathy and kind of a damning indictment of a world that more and more sees people as disposable. It's about the human cost of pragmatic social policies. So yeah, I'm giving this an 8 out of 10 for me. Go catch it at the projector today. It's available there right now.
Nice.
Next up, though, let's move on to a film that we all have seen.
Oh yeah.
Oh,
Jordan Peele's latest sci-fi horror film, Nope,
nope.
is his grandest and most unorthodox yet. It is a UFO-centric action blockbuster starring Daniel Kaluuya, Kiki Palmer, and again, Stephen Yeun. It is well acted and features absolutely magnificent choreography, cinematography, and sound design. It is also thematically dense and ripe for endless conversation pieces where people like us gather and talk about what it all means. It is a
Yeah,
very
man.
smart film, but it's also very frustrating in some ways, making this Peele's most divisive film to date.
Yeah.
What did you think about it, Isa?
Oh man. No, Nope is a ride. It is quite a ride. Yeah, I do remember like after the show when we were out just kind of on my way home, like I was thinking about the show for a long time, right? It took me a long time to just kind of like process my feelings with all of that. But just off the bat, the entire experience of just kind of being there, some of the things that struck me very kind of like vividly and viscerally was the amazing use of sound design to capture the space in which it is set, right? Like you have these kind of like rolling plains and hills in the within the valley, the use of echo, the use of sound as part of the device, you know, to move the plot along and to kind of stir the action as well was something that I enjoyed kind of thoroughly just sitting there and like taking in the amount of work that they put into that for sure. The thematic explorations that I think hits you will probably talk about in a bit and that you kind of hit on right off the bat was something that only really settled in for me a couple of days later, just kind of like processing the entire thing. Nope is an extremely different film from what we have gotten from Jordan Peele so far. You know, it is different in its tone and it is different in what it is trying to achieve in terms of its messaging and the way that the story is told. So it might come, I think, as a shock to some people who are strapped in for like a Get Out kind of like thing, you know, on us kind of thing. The use of kind of like space and the characters that inhabit this particular part of kind of not rural necessarily. What would be a better word to describe that?
Countryside,
Yeah, the
though.
countryside, America really feels like um, the isolation that it conjures really places these characters in a sort of heightened sense, right? Like you have a heightened sense of these characters because there's so few other characters involved in this particular story. You know, and it shifts your focus such that you have to pay attention to them, much in the same way you have to pay attention to the central mystery of what's going on in the film itself. Yeah, and overall, I enjoyed it. I don't think it's an easy film to watch necessarily because there are many things that pull you in multiple directions. I would say, all right. And as far like non-spoilery things goes,
Yep.
I did enjoy it and would recommend it just so you see where you sit on the spectrum, really, because it is like Hidze has said, a very divisive film, and like it's one of those films that you're going to be discussing like for a while, you know, just thematically and what it was trying to say with its message or the questions that it brings up, and even like the kind of creative choices that were made in making the film.
Yes, yes. You know, like they say, everybody's on the spectrum. What part of the spectrum are you on, Hadi?
It's about a UFO law eating things lah.
Sure, it is.
No, it
You're
absolutely
right.
is. Yes, it
Yeah.
is.
You're thinking too much. It's just a UFO eating. No, like it's. I mean, obviously, it's Jordan Peele, right? So there's obviously some deeper meaning behind a lot of the scenes. I feel that. I feel it's not too. I feel that it's not as It's not as serious as perhaps the first one.
Get Out.
Yeah, Get Out. I feel this is a bit more westerny kind of homage kind of thing
Yeah.
going on, which I really enjoy too. And I think it's about. Again, this is not my original idea, but then when I read it, I was like, oh yeah, most probably lah. You know, the the reclamation of like black actors and and their history with Hollywood and all that stuff lah. I think I kind of agree with that lah. Once you watch the entire thing, but I feel that this is perhaps it's one of the more diverse films that Jordan Peele has ever made lah. But it's still highly enjoyable though.
I had a good time.
Yeah, it's and like I love the little Easter eggs thrown throughout the film. Because Jordan Peele is a anime fan lah. He's a fan of a lot of things, right? That I think there was like there was an Akira Easter egg. There was an Evangelion Easter egg.
Yeah.
That kind of thing.
Yeah, he was supposed to direct Akira, the live action one, before he pulled out.
So I think he managed to do like one of the Akira scenes. I think it was the motorcycle one. Yeah, but whatever it is, right? Good stuff.
Yeah.
Again, on the surface, it might be a very simple story of a brother and sister trying to capture in terms of like video record this UFO lah.
Yes.
Monster.
Yes.
UFO monster. Does that make sense? UFO monster.
Correct.
Yeah. On the deeper scale, there's a lot of like black allegory lah, which will take some time to figure out, because I still feel that I'm not 100% figured things out yet. Yeah. So yeah, it'll take a while, I think. Yeah, maybe a second watching or something. And I only watched it once. Yeah.
Sure.
So yeah.
Yeah.
But I had a lot of fun though.
Yes. Yeah. It is in the end a fun film to watch, regardless of its themes. You know? I think perhaps the most interesting, or at least the most provocative way to interpret the film is IMO, to view it as inherently about filmmaking itself. Not just that, but about audience expectations and the unhealthy relationship between fans and art and tragedy and money. To do this, Peele creates an all-out spectacle that is allegorical. He warns you at the beginning of the film, right, with a quote from the minor prophet Nahum. I will pelt you with filth, I will treat you with contempt, and make you a spectacle. It's a movie about spectacle. And though deep in themes, the story of Nope is pretty simple, like Hadi described.
Yeah.
OJ and Emerald Haywood, played by Daniel Kaluuya and Kiki Palmer respectively, are siblings and owners of the Haywood Hollywood Horse Ranch. After their father dies from falling debris 6 months prior, they are struggling financially, having to sell some of the horses they've trained and wrangled to Ricky Park, aka Jupe, played by Stephen Yeun, who is a former child star who now runs a quasi-amusement park / rodeo. When Jupe was young, he starred in a sitcom with a chimp who went berserk one day and attacked the cast in a bloody, horrifying rampage. Jupe has memorabilia from his childhood sitcom days, charging people a fee to check them out. OJ and Emerald, and unbeknownst to them, Jupe discover an alien creature camouflaged as a cloud. It's a kind of shape-shifting animal that usually takes the form of a circular saucer, the archetypical UFO, with a dark hole in the middle and a mouth that can suck up people and animals for food. The three of them see the alien less like a threat, which must be stopped, and more like a financial opportunity, if only they can get proof. Jupe, who already exploits his traumatic childhood, right?
Yeah.
Attempts to turn it into an attraction at his park, while the Haywood siblings, helped by electronic expert Angel and a mumbling cinematographer Atlas, they deck out their ranch with cameras and prepare for a photo shoot for the alien, if they can survive it. With the plot laid out this way, we can see the major theme arise: the commodification of wild animals and or tragedy. The chimp and the alien are pretty much the same thing. The profitability of using art as a way to capture the horrors of life. Profit and its relationship with tragedy is such an integral part of the film that the falling object which kills the father is a coin regurgitated from the alien from high in the sky, right?
Yeah.
Jupe uses the tragedy of his childhood for financial profit and now sees the alien as a profitable scheme, and he's sacrificing horses to it. OJ and Emerald see the same thing, and their family has a somewhat similar history of turning something awful into lucrative commercial art. They are descendants of the first person to appear in a motion picture, a black man riding a horse in H. Wood's Murbridge's Horse in Motion from 1878. This is a real thing. their opening spiel given by them and their father before them, and presumably each preceding ancestor, on film sets where they're hired as wranglers, they reference the tragedy that this black man never got the recognition he deserved, but that the wrongs can be corrected through the horse wrangling business of his ancestors. Tragedy so easily becomes spectacle to be documented and to be monetized. Even the choice to name Kaluuya's character OJ
Yeah.
is fascinating.
It is.
And OJ Simpson is even referenced early in the film
Juice.
when a blonde white woman tenses up with the mention of his name. OJ Simpson's probable murder of Nicole Brown became a massive cultural spectacle.
Yep.
Yep.
It-
One which included an epic car chase, a lurid courtroom drama, and it was watched by millions, along with also many book deals and a successful mini-series and documentary. Simpson even had the audacity to write a book
How I Did
entitled
It.
"If I Did
I
It,
did it. Yeah.
This Is How I Would Do It."
Yeah.
The very first shot of note is of an empty section of a studio audience, rows of chairs beneath the applause sign,
Yeah.
and the seated viewer watches the empty seats of past viewers on the screen. Like from there, the references to filmmaking and audience members are relentless. You know, 4 main characters are or were in the film business in some capacity. The only other main character, Angel, installs cameras and watches the footage from screens. When the 4 of them unite to find the alien, they're essentially trying to replicate a movie
It
production.
is. Yeah.
They're setting up cameras, communicating on walkie-talkies, watching the video display. They're waiting for their talents, like some guy who's like Johnny Depp trying to get him out of his trailer. OJ wears a hoodie with the word "crew" on the back from his time working on Scorpion King, which LOL by the way. This is a
Best
film
Rocks
crew.
movie.
First and best are not the same thing. This is a film crew, and they're making a movie. The alien is the subject, but maybe, I think, in my opinion, what Jordan Peele is trying to say, the alien is us, the audience, because Angel refers to the alien as the viewer or viewers. It hovers above them, looking down at what looks like an eye, with what looks like an eye,
Yeah.
but it's really a gaping mouth,
It is.
consuming everything in its path. OJ tries to control it, to wrangle it the way he wrangles horses,
Yep.
to tame the beast like the chimp, though some animals ain't fit to be trained, like one character says, I think in this day and age of fan outrage and expectations and discourse pretty much ruining the art of filmmaking, it makes sense that studios and filmmakers would want to tame the fans. They fear them, but at the same time make a huge profit from them, just as the characters in Note both fear and profit off the alien. Is the alien us, the viewers, the fans, the content consumers devouring art and turning all media into empty calories? There's, of course, arguments to be had of all sorts regarding what the alien represents. It could be tragedy itself, something awful that everyone is looking to monetize, or, like Hadi said, it could just be an alien eating shit,
Yeah.
Um,
But I mean,
the
that's the
only thing-
beauty of it, I think.
Right,
Yeah.
right. And the one thing that I think backs up like my interpretation is that the one thing that seems to throw the viewer off, right, is when a character refuses to look at it.
Yeah.
The viewer gets confused or passes over OJ and Emerald when they are steadfastly staring elsewhere. The Haywoods can make their film and survive only if they stop looking at the viewer. It's like how I think Peele being burdened by the weight of audience expectations after Get Out, being called the new Spielberg and all of that, can only make his art if he stops looking to the fans and the ridiculous amount of expectations they feed upon him. Do not look at your fans. The thing is, Nope is a fascinating movie to think about. I've spent hours trying to understand the film, and the more I think about it, the more I like it. But is it successful as a pure movie-going experience? Only to an extent. Would you agree, Hadi?
Yeah, to an extent, you're right. But
Yeah.
like I said, when you like strip out if you just think of it just as a alien eating movie, right? Does it work? I feel that it does to a large extent.
Sure.
Like, is it entertaining? Is that it's it is it does engage you throughout the runtime of 105 minutes,
120.
120 minutes, right? So I think it engages you throughout, and I think I still feel this is a successful Jordan Peele outing.
Yeah.
It's just that it mindfucks you a bit, like if you really put once you start thinking about what you're watching, lah.
Sure.
Yeah, but overall, I feel that it works as a film. to an extent.
Right, right. Yeah, yeah. What about your thoughts, Isa? And then, give your rating at the end of
Wait,
it.
can I give my rating?
Oh, yeah, please, go ahead, Adi.
I'll give it a 7.5 out of 10.
Yeah.
Cool. Isa?
Yeah, as on its own as a film, right? Like apart from the message that it's trying to say, and like whether or not like as an alien film, it does deliver spectacle, right? Which I appreciate. There is, I mean, like I've seen some people talk about like how it swerves a bit too much, it reels a bit too much, like it's confused in its own kind of way. And it depends on whether you want to ascribe that as something that's done intentional by Pew, right? Because on the many levels, right, that's what audiences are today, right? They are distracted, they reel and they pull away from things, right? Like we cast our nets wide, and in terms of the things that we consume as well. So if all of those things are like additional kind of meta narrative, amazing, great, genius, good stuff. But the actual experience of sitting there is uneven in its totality. But because I am enthralled more often than not, and I walked away with a lot to chew on and something impressed upon my being, both emotionally and mentally,
Yep.
I would say that it is a success by all for all intents and purposes, right? So I'm also
Sure.
giving this a 7 out of 10.
7.5 out of 10 for me. So we're all very close in our ratings.
Yeah.
I think as a spectacle about the emptiness of spectacle,
Yep.
I think it intentionally swerves the viewer to that extent to feel disappointed by the emptiness of its own spectacle,
Yeah.
as meta messaging. I think it does that as a pro, and it's also a con.
Yes,
to be honest.
absolutely.
So yeah, which is why like we have like a good but not great reviews for it lah.
Yeah.
Anyways, I'm moving on to the second part of quick hits. This will be a lot shorter because I either were disappointed or felt meh about most of these titles. First of all, let's move on to Paper Girls, which is actually a comic book I reviewed way back in Genre Equality.
Oh,
I
yeah.
love this comic book. This Amazon time travel adventure based on Brian K. Vaughan's amazing comic book series, which I gave a glowing 10 out of 10 review back in GE21. In my opinion, Paper Ghost is the best BKV comic ever, and that says a lot, considering he's also the creator of Saga,
Yep.
Why the Last Man,
Yep.
Ex Machina, Runaways, and more.
Yeah.
So I had high hopes for the show. But the story revolves around 4 paper delivery girls who are accidentally transported into the future by battling time-traveling factions during a fateful Halloween night in 1988. On the plus side, the character work in the show does the comics justice. They are well developed, and the emotional arcs are for each of them quite potent. Unfortunately, the nostalgic coming-of-age elements never really feel integrated into its epic sci-fi saga.
Yeah.
The problem is whether due to budgetary limits or a desire to streamline the comics, the show flattens the look and the scope of the story into something dull and derivative. Gone are the clean lines and the gooey gore or the vivid colors of Cliff Chiang's artwork, and is replaced with, quite honestly, mid-budget CW level cinematography and VFX that feel messy and drab even before especially the VFX really threw me off. It looks very, very cheap. As in this day and age in 2022, it looks like it could have been made in the 90s. The plot is also simplified to a startling extent, making the show seem way dumber than the comics. So it's only a 5 out of 10 for me. Next up, I'm going to talk about DC League of Super Pets. The latest DC animation is a surprising one. It's an animated comedy about an animal team led by Superman's dog, Crypto. Crypto the Superdog and Superman are best friends, sharing the same superpowers and fighting crime in Metropolis side by side. But when Superman and the rest of the Justice League are kidnapped, Crypto must convince a ragtag shelter pack to master their own powers and help him rescue the superheroes. Despite some adorable animals and a snarky sense of humor, DC League of Super Pets is only intermittently amusing. It has a fun voice cast led by The Rock and Kevin Hart.
Yeah, man.
But in the end, I think this is the kind of lazy effort that squanders his characters and will likely bore anyone over the age of 9. In my opinion, so it's a 4 out of 10 for me. Give this one a miss. Next up, I'm going to be talking. Oh, sorry, you wanted to say something?
I say fine.
Oh, okay. I mean, it's The Rock, so I'm sure you're gonna watch it eventually.
That's true.
Yeah. It's better than Scorpion King. I gotta say
Sure.
that.
A lot of things are better than the Scorpion King.
That's not a
Sure.
high bar. Yeah.
Next up, we'll be talking about a movie that is not yet out in cinemas, but will be released on 2nd September. So the day after this recording is released. 3,000 Years of Longing is George Miller's latest film. It follows Dr. Alifia Bini, played by Tilda Swinton, who is an English academic attending a conference in Istanbul. One day, she happens to encounter a jinn, played by Idris Elba, who offers her 3 wishes in exchange for his freedom. This presents 2 problems. First, she doubts that he is real. And second, because she's a scholar of story and mythology, she knows all the cautionary tales of wishes gone wrong. The jinn then pleads his case by telling her fantastical stories about his past to put her worries at ease. The jinn tells Alifia the story of how he ended up in a glass-blown cell, a tale which spans dynasties, continents, and millennia.
Ooh.
It's partly a love story with Tilda Swinton and Idris Elba spending most of their time in a hotel, philosophizing.
Good. Good attempt there, right there.
In this respect, it isn't a particularly successful intellectual exercise because while Alifia and the jinn debate continually, they're only kind of surface level meditations. Before Sunset for Children, the movie is though far more successful as an Arabian Nights collection of short stories.
Okay.
It's in this vibrant, fantastical flashbacks of the jinn's past that Miller's visual invention and his sequences comes to the fore. Each of the jinn's tales transports the film far beyond the confines of the hotel room. He takes you back to the time of the Queen of Sheba in her court, a world of magic and myth made real. He takes you back to the Ottoman Empire and 19th century Turkey. Each fable is enchanting flights of fancy, and 3,000 Years of Longing is the kind of playful adult fairy tale that's kind of all but extinct in the era of franchise blockbuster filmmaking. It's enjoyable, but not perfect, so it's a 7 out of 10 for me. Next up is Westworld. I believe it is season 4 right now.
Yeah.
I am no IT expert or anything, but did anybody ever consider unplugging Westworld and then plugging it back in? I ask because this show seems very, very broken.
I haven't caught the latest season yet.
Nobody should. For a show in which nobody can really ever die, or if they do die, they're brought back as robots. And after the 3rd season, anybody can apparently change identities with the flick of a switch.
Yep.
HBO's Westworld is extremely bad at resetting itself, despite all its characters resetting itself. As this 4th season begins, Westworld has settled into what is now a comfortable routine. Take a couple of episodes to establish the new normal after a multi-year time jump, even if that amount of exposition is completely unnecessary or woefully insufficient. Finds an interesting rhythm for a couple of episodes mid-season, and then it unravels into convoluted chaos, wherein it becomes clear that nothing really matters, nothing makes sense, and it becomes even clearer that there are no meaningful stakes because nobody ever really dies. And then everything is hand waved away with techno mumbo jumbo, and then we go on to season 5. It has become, I don't say this lightly, but it's become Tenet level stupid. So yeah, it's very nonsensical. Actually, Tenet is not nonsensical. It's actually very simple. It's
Convoluted.
very stupid lah. It over convolutes to hide the simplicity and stupidity of the story, and the lack of emotional stakes and real character arcs, and uses its complex structure to hide its stupid plot. It's 1 out of 10 for me.
1 out of 10. Wow.
Yeah. Next up, I'm going to be talking about Day Shift, which stars Jamie Foxx as a vampire hunter.
Let's go.
I think Isa has seen this one. Maybe you want to have a couple of words about this?
I mean, like, it's serviceable, right? Jamie Foxx is entertaining on the big screen, right? He basically plays another version of himself. As far as like vampire lore goes, he gives a little bit, which is good enough. As far as like interesting kind of like action scenes involving vampires, we get a lot of action scenes. Some of them like very well choreographed. I think the driving scene was dope. The driving scene was dope. The scene in the nest was dope. Like packed full of action and all that. Like all in all, like it gives you a simple kind of like premise and delivers on the action, and it's possible lah. So I enjoyed it. It's nothing phenomenal. I'm just gonna give it like a 5.5 or a 6 out of 10.
Yeah, six and a half. Like it's a fun time.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. You all are absolutely correct. Yeah, that's about it. Next up, I'm going to be talking about I Am Groot on Disney Plus.
Aw.
I Am Groot. After stealing all of his scenes in Guardians of the Galaxy Volume
Yeah.
2, the adorably chaotic baby Groot headlines his own mini series. This is MCU's second fully animated series, and I Am Groot is unique because it only consists of 5 short episodes made up of 3-minute episodes.
Yeah.
Very, very short. The whole show is 16 minutes in total. Seeing as everything is set between Volume 1 and Volume 2, the small scale nature of these vignettes leaves the door open for some very wild stories, but inconsequential stories. It's fun, it's cute, it's wacky, and Baby Groot brings chaos everywhere he goes. It's quite adorable. Not essential, but it's a breezy watch, so it's a 7 out of 10. Next up, I'm going to be talking about Pengabdi Setan
Oh, Satan.
Communion.
Satan's
Slaves 2 Communion. Yeah, it follows the enormous success of 2017 Satan's Slaves, which was the highest grossing Indonesian movie ever, directed by Joko Anwar. And he's back with a sequel that expands on the first movie as part of a much bigger storyline. In terms of technology, too, it's pretty big because this is the first Indonesian film to be filmed entirely in IMAX.
Whoa.
In Communion, we learned that the Suwono family is now residing in a 14-story flat, like HDB flat. I know it's not HDB in Indonesia, but you get what I mean.
Yeah, it's an apartment building.
Apartment building, yeah. And Rini's dad from the first movie, his dad believes that living in a flat is safer since there are so many
Neighbours
other
and all,
residents in case of emergency. Fuck living in an isolated forest, or the suburbs.
Sure.
Let's live in a flat where there's so many people. And much. However, one stormy night, the ghosts of their past somehow return to haunt them again.
Yep.
And they have no place to go because of a severe thunderstorm. The entire ground floor is submerged in flood water. So Rini and her family are once again trapped and are forced to survive a terrifying ordeal. The film begins in 1950 and moves into the 1980s. And it does a great job at setting its period pieces, establishing tone and a creepy atmosphere. Joko Anwar's deliberate build-up establishes the overall geography of its environment, of its 1980s flat location very well, showing us, the dark corridors.
so dark.
It's laying the
It's like
groundwork
the
for what
worst
we
HDB flat you can ever be in.
Yeah, it's I think it's the building that they shot the raid in.
It looks like that, yeah.
Yeah. So
Really?
and the way that he lays the geography of the thing, you kind of know, oh, this is where the jump scare is going to happen later. You know it's coming, but then it's a nice, it's a good setup.
Okay.
There's an elaborate set piece leading to a gruesome elevator incident that's easily the best scene in the sequel. It showcases Joko Anwar's skill in escalating tension and suspense. There's even an only murders in the building type subplot that involves the residents investigating a mystery which might connect with the ghost.
Oh, wait, yeah. I saw this on the trailer, actually.
Like the first, Joko Anwar's tendency to use elegant long takes is also something that distinguishes his film from his Southeast Asian horror contemporaries. He's just a better craftsman than everyone else in Southeast Asia right now.
Sure.
However, not everything works in Communion. A lot of the jump scares, I'm going to say 99% of the jump scares, tend to feel random and surprisingly cheap. A lot of them are even predictable at times. And several of them just flat out recycle moments from the first movie. Another big flaw is that the film could have been trimmed a fair bit.
Okay.
The movie is bloated by a lot of filler and perspectives from side characters that weren't necessary. So overall, a bit more of a mixed bag than the first. I'm giving this a 6 out of 10.
Okay.
Finally, I'm going to be talking about Samaritan. Sylvester Stallone stars in this superhero movie on Amazon Prime. He plays a super strong superhero loner who a young boy named Sam, who's played by Ashtray from Euphoria. I don't know his name, but he's Ashtray. R.I.P. Ashtray. Spoilers for Euphoria, sorry.
He did.
So this kid Ashtray, Sam, believes that he finds this old man. He believes him to be the superhero Samaritan. A few decades prior, they live in Granite City, and it was plunged into chaos because of a pair of invincible twins in metallic costumes. One brother, Samaritan, supposedly fought for good, while the other, dubbed Nemesis, wreaks havoc with a magical hammer forged from his hatred of Samaritan. I'm not sure how that works, but okay. Both are believed to have perished in a fire, and despite neither one being seen for decades, they have left this indelible mark on the city. Some think that Samaritan is a hero and hate Nemesis as a villain. Others, like a local gangster and many others, believe that Samaritan could have been a protector for the rich and powerful, whereas Nemesis was more of a fighter for the people. Now, this young kid Sam tries to convince Sylvester Stallone to come out of retirement to save his city. None of this amounts to very much, mind you.
Huh?
It's a start to finish snooze. Its appeal hangs on a late reveal that you can genuinely see coming 2 minutes into the movie. It is a hodgepodge of non-ideas borrowed from other better movies in the superhero genre and in the superhero satire genre. Absolutely nothing about this movie is worth a watch. So 0.5 out of 10, maybe?
No.
I gave it 0.5 because it's Stallone and I just have a soft spot
Yeah,
for it,
that's
my
why I have a
friends.
soft spot for Stallone too.
Yeah, so,
Killer.
oh well.
Oh man. Killer.
Finally, for today, we're going to wrap up with a catch up of Star Trek Lower Decks and Star Trek Prodigy. I'm excited to talk about these two shows because I've actually, despite being a Trekkie, I have woefully overlooked the animated shows from Star Trek.
Sure.
I did not follow up on Lower Decks after watching season 1, and I didn't watch Prodigy at all last year.
Oh.
Thankfully, though, I have finally caught up. And now I'm ready to talk about it. In good time too, because Lower Decks just premiered its third season just last week. Let's begin with you, Hadi, because I think you've been watching this throughout. What are your thoughts about Lower Decks?
Lower Decks.
Star Trek.
I think we all had a problem with Lower Decks when it felt like a Rick and Morty ripoff.
Yeah.
Like, they just felt very lazy and very like trying too hard to be something it's not. Season 2 rectified a lot of that when it became its own like show when they doubled down on the character development of a lot of the crew. When they had really good episodic adventures where they actually, I mean, even though it's like in a more comedic setting, they discuss AI, they discuss first contact and what happens after first contact, the repercussions of first contact, things like that which make it very tricky in its own way which I really enjoy, and you can't help but kind of slowly love the characters here because they aren't your typical Spock and Kirk and upper deck guys right.
Bridge crew.
Yeah, bridge crew, the guys that you don't really hear about but in their own way have duties that are really important
Sure.
Yeah, and therefore they have very weird adventures which is very different from upper deck adventures.
Yes.
And some of the ship itself is this underdog kind of feeling because the ship itself is an underdog ship. It's not the Enterprise, it's not the Titan, it's not the Voyager. It's not the Discovery. Is this weird ship called the Cerritos, which is a California class ship, which is old and which is it's slowly being phased out and all that. Yeah, so it has that charm of an underdog story throughout season 2, where there is still important ramifications in terms of federation politics, in terms of space politics and all that. But then like less important than the usual Star Trek stuff, but still important enough that someone needs to be there to make sure it's get done the diplomacy, that kind of thing. So it balances really well, and everybody loves a good underdog story. Especially how they solve their problems using brains intelligence instead of brute force. I always enjoy whenever Star Trek does that. It always gives me the chills.
Absolutely. Like if you recall, like last year, I was quite nonplussed by the first season of Lower Decks, right? I liked the concept, but it was this animated workplace comedy focusing on, the lowest ranking officers of a low level starship. Not the lowest ranking officers of a high level starship, because there's a TNG episode also called Lower Decks about that, But what about the low ranking people in even lower level starships?
Exactly.
Right? It was interesting, but I was bothered by its clunky execution. It just felt like a lesser version of Solar Opposites or a lesser version of Rick and Morty.
Exactly.
Just propped up by a ton of Star Trek specific jokes. And thankfully, the show turned around its focus. Season 2 was very, very fun. And much like the original Star Trek animated series from the 70s, Lower Decks uses its format as a license to poke into familiar Trek tropes from different angles. It grounds meta humor with a likable cast who each have well-developed arcs in season 2. In addition, the show handles canon and continuity fantastically, often better than its live-action counterparts. It acknowledges shifts in status quo while making sure that each individual's episode also stands out as its own discrete, satisfying story. The thing I love most about Trek is its fundamental optimism.
Yes.
At the start of the first season, there was some question if it could maintain an effective mix of Rick and Morty style meta humor, which depends on constant undercutting of convention and a boundless contempt for everything. Rick and Morty is a fundamentally nihilistic show, right?
Exactly.
And that's a nihilistic type of humor. And can it balance that alongside Trek's utopian vision of a future where things really can work out, basically if people and aliens work hard enough and try to understand each other? The solution the show eventually landed on was to balance its intermittent bursts of cynicism with fundamentally good-natured leads and a seemingly boundless enthusiasm for itself.
Yeah.
I've never seen a show love Star Trek more than Lower Decks. There is no other show out there, besides the Orville probably, that is so proud to be a Star Trek show.
Yes.
The writers are pulling out the deepest cuts, references for throwaway jokes.
Yeah.
They showed season 3, episode 1.
Yes,
that just dropped. So like in the beginning there were all the news feeds, right? And then at the bottom there was the little ticker for the news feed, and about there was a riot at a concert.
Yeah.
There was a season 1 episode where one of the engineers left Starfleet because his passion was in music. And then it turns out, as we learned on the ticker, that he actually became a great musician, and there was a riot at his concert. So it's super deep cut jokes like that, from a throwaway season 1 TNG episode that nobody remembers. That I love and
it's
as
canon.
much as it's canon, it's clearly canon, And as much as he likes to make fun of certain silly things about Starfleet, in the end, it embraces Gene Roddenberry's vision way better than Picard or Discovery.
Yep.
At its best, Lower Decks comes across as, cheeky nods to the past that pay homage without completely losing sight of the present. And even better, they add complexity to familiar concepts like second context and stuff like that. In ways that enrich the show's approach to Trek lore.
Exactly.
It also helps that I think the overall joke writing has improved a lot from the start of last season. I think the show has found itself, like most Trek shows, if they find themselves in season 2 and 3. Lower Decks continues in that fashion.
For some strange reason, that's a Trek curse. Season 1 will always be bad.
It's been broken though. Strange
New Worlds. Season 1 actually is good. Yeah. But that means the other seasons might be bad.
You never know. Like Strange New Worlds season 1 is legitimately one of the best Star Trek seasons I've seen from any show.
Yeah, true.
And I'm a bit afraid
Same.
if I hope that this is the worst of them and it gets better from here, but I don't see how they can because it's so amazing already. But let's move on to Prodigy. Like Lower Decks, the first season of Star Trek Prodigy is also an animated show.
But not targeted at us, this one.
Say again?
This one not really targeted at us, lah.
No, it has 2 key differences. Namely, this one is aimed squarely at 10 to 15-year-old kids, and it's the first Trek show to solely use 3D animation.
Yes.
So what is the show about? It's set in 2383, 5 years after the Voyager returned to Earth at the end of Star Trek Voyager, the series. It follows a motley crew of young aliens in the Tars Lamora prison colony. The characters are all essentially begin as child slave laborers who grew up on a prison planet. However, one day, a few of them find an abandoned Starfleet ship, the USS Protostar. They take control of the ship. They must learn to work together as they make their way from the Delta Quadrant to the Alpha Quadrant. Why do they want to go so far from the home quadrant? Well, besides the fact that they are fugitives on the run, they are actually inspired by the ethos of the Federation when, through the ship they stole, they learn about the values that Starfleet stands for. For example, the ship comes equipped with a training hologram modeled after Captain fucking Janeway, voiced by her actual actress, and designed to help new cadets. Star Trek at its core has always been about connections, people who couldn't be more different, setting aside differences and working together to solve problems. This is what the show is about. It's a group of kids from very different cultures and races that we don't know about because we are based in the Alpha and Beta quadrants, right? We don't, next to besides Voyager, we know next to nothing about the Delta
exactly.
Quadrant.
Yeah.
And all these are new races, and they're learning to work and grow together as they search for a better life and explore the stars. Like the crews on various Star Trek shows, the Protostar crew becomes a surrogate family. And this is very unique for Star Trek. This is the first Trek series to have a cast completely composed of aliens. There are no humans on the show.
Oh yeah.
And
Correct.
that only underlines this fact. Everyone from the captain to everyone down, right? They're all alien slaves, and they're all aliens. There are no humans on the show. And the only humanoid is a hologram. It's a Janeway hologram. That's it.
Yeah. I mean, I love the guest holograms lah, basically.
All Voyager cameos.
Yeah.
And over time, each member of the crew finds their own role on the ship, which is important, as Star Trek always puts the focus on different roles within a starship's hierarchy. I mean, think about how many times Geordi LaForge used his engineering skills to save the Enterprise, or how many times Montgomery Scott beamed his crewmates out of danger in the original series. Prodigy takes things a step further, with each member of the crew choosing a role, not being assigned, choosing a role that happens to utilize their natural talents.
Exactly.
Prodigy is great because it explores the concept of Starfleet from the point of view of teenagers who have not even heard of it.
Yeah.
Therefore, it is a perfect show to introduce teenagers to Star Trek, who also have not heard of Star Trek. I mean, all in all, Prodigy is one heck of a show with great visuals, great action, and filled with the type of moral and ethical conundrums that Trek is known for. Do you agree, Hadi? Have you seen Prodigy? You've seen?
Yes,
right?
I have. But I haven't finished it yet, though.
Okay.
But again, I agree with all of that. Just the fact that it's all alien cast. There's something. I wouldn't say cute, but I think it's important. Because humans have always been the centerpiece of every such Star Trek series, lah. Yeah, so this is kind of that the ability. I mean, again, because it's targeted at kids and all that, right? It is in a way a very good introduction to what the ethos of Star Trek is, without having to really hit you over the head with it. I feel that a lot of the little issues like the crew have with one another and all that are solved very well. Solved with intelligence, with using science, engineering, and all that kind of thing, lah. Which again, yes, I mean it's a Star Trek show. That's where diplomacy and all that comes into play, lah. I feel that this is again because it's unexplored, right? It's in the Delta Quadrant. It gives the show a lot of room to do a lot of things without having to be kind of pinned down by law and whatever has come before, lah.
Yeah, you don't have to remember when was the Romulan Vulcan War or whatever.
Yeah.
These are all new species.
Exactly,
right?
and still they have little Easter eggs here and there, which is beautiful, lah.
From Voyager, because Voyager did explore that realm.
Exactly. So good for again. I can't wait to finish this season. Actually, I think it's like 10 episodes, right? I think I'm about halfway.
Yeah.
So I'll finish this up, and then I think they are going to be out again in October this year.
Yeah.
So just in time, lah.
Absolutely, yeah, fantastic. If you were like me and were disillusioned by Picard and Discovery, I would recommend that you jump back on the Star Trek train because there are three other very good shows out there. Strange New Worlds is probably the best of them all. It's an A+ show, and these are very solid B+ shows. In Lower Decks and Prodigy. And by the way, since we're on the topic of Trek, right? Like I would like to revise my Orville rating now that I've seen the finale to a 10.
Yes.
That was a finale, man.
It felt like a series finale, right? Because they weren't renewed. Yeah. I mean, they are not sure whether they're gonna get renewed, so they just fucking threw everything in there.
Yeah. I mean, it ended. All the loose ends were tied up. It was a beautiful story at the end.
They brought back the OGs later.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Just for one scene.
It's a wedding. You find a lot of people you haven't met in a while at a wedding.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So I think all in all, Orville as a series is near perfect.
Absolutely. Yeah. 3 seasons of near perfection. In fact, it's gotten better every season, to be honest.
Well, like For All Mankind, but I think it's better than For All Mankind also.
Nah, I think season 2 is better than season 3.
Ooh.
For All Mankind, I mean. Like, For All Mankind doesn't get better every season. Like, season 2 peaked
Oh
hard.
yeah. Okay, season 3. Yeah. Okay.
Season 3
It's
is
still
very good,
but it's
but
not as good as
it has
season 2.
problems.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Anyways, that wraps it up for this episode of Genre Equality.
Alright.
We'll be back next month to talk about French classics. That's me and Isa Fong.
Oh,
But that won't be sponsored. No, you're not there, but I don't think you want to be there anyway.
I don't want anything classic shows. But I will be back on 56 though.
Huh?
Behold 56, right?
We are time traveling? Are you fucking up the time-space continuum?
No?
Oh no, yeah, you're right. Behold 56 is
It's been
next month. You're right. Yeah. So it's October. Yeah, you'll be back in Behold 56.
Something
Don't worry
about
about that.
sports,
As we always talk about,
that's
we only talk about sports. And Genre Equality 58 also, we'll be talking about What We Do in the Shadows
Yep.
season
That was a good season.
4.
Yep, season 4.
Still running. Harley Quinn season 3. Primal season 2.
That's a good one too.
Isa will be back with Anime Corner then.
Oh, nice.
Yep.
And I'll be continuing Quick Hits Classics because, as I've told Hardy recently,
Yes.
I've been on a big space opera binge. I finished Babylon 5, not just Babylon 5, but I've also
Basket.
read. I mean, Babylon 5 franchise stuff for now. I've also watched its 2 spin off shows, its 5 TV movies.
No way.
And all its books and comics. So I finished the entire Babylon 5 franchise. So I'll be talking about that as well. I've also recently finished the Farscape franchise too, but I'll save that for another Genre Equality. I don't want to
Sure.
bog every episode with if not, it'll be like 90 minutes of me talking about 2 space operas. But I'll be talking about Babylon 5, one of my favorite shows from the 90s.
Yeah,
Back,
we can join you
again.
for that. I mean, I just finished Stargate.
SG1.
Yeah, so
Ooh.
I'll come back and try to finish Babylon 5. Just the series though, not like everything that you did.
Yeah. Oh, Isa, by the way, like me and Hadi, right, have had this discussion about how we think this is the new renaissance for space operas because it feels like in the 1990s, like there were like a dozen space opera shows running at once.
Yeah.
The Next Generation, Voyager, and Deep Space Nine were all running at the same time.
Yeah.
Babylon 5, Farscape, Stargate SG1.
Yep.
So many others, and right now, we're coming off the heels. I know the Expanse is gone now, but the Expanse is part of this era.
Yeah. Sure.
6 fucking Star Trek shows, again lah. The Orville, For All Mankind, stuff like that. Do you think this is a new renaissance for the space opera genre?
Ooh, I think we're getting there for sure, right? Like, Trek will always hold a disproportionate, monopoly on the entire space. We may. I mean, I don't know lah. Okay, Star Wars is visibly missing, right, from like this particular era, just because like
I mean, they're doing their TV shows and all lah.
Yeah, the TV shows, some of them great, some of them not so great.
Yeah.
Right. So they are kind of like falling in kind of like reputation, and also like if we're talking like back in the 90s as well, like we didn't have Star Wars TV shows, so it's hard to kind of count them as part of that.
Correct.
But like I think a lot of time that we spent with so many seasons of The Expanse, right, and the promise of people kind of either building upon that, it's definitely, I think we're approaching the epoch for sure. I think within the next 5 years or so, we're going to see a ton of that. Some of which may or may not have been announced already, but we'll be definitely keeping track of that at Genre Equality. So we'll see how that goes.
Absolutely, yeah. I think the bare minimum that you need, right, is 3 good Star Trek shows on at once, like TNG, Deep Space Nine, and Voyager.
Okay.
Right now we have 3 good Star Trek shows running at once.
Yep.
We also have one show that is mirroring a Star Trek show, like DS9 and Babylon 5. In this case, is The Orville and Star Trek. We need the gritty political space drama, aka Babylon 5 / The Expanse.
Yes.
The only thing that is missing is a Farscape, like a very wacky, zany puppet kind of thing.
I don't know if we have that yet.
We have Guardians of the Galaxy, but that's in the cinemas, so it's not the same.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like, given that history repeats itself, right? And you have already laid out a very particular formula. Maybe we'll get one soon. Who knows?
Yeah. A Farscape reboot, perhaps.
Oh, that'll be great.
Yeah.
That's super underrated, don't you think?
Yeah, it's by the Jim Henson company,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah. Really cool puppetry and all that.
So as I rewatched DS9 and Voyager and Babylon 5 and all of that, the effects are really dated.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Very,
mean,
very dated.
yeah.
They're PlayStation 1 effects. But in watching Farscape, I was shocked to discover that it's not dated at all
Practical.
because everything is practical. Yeah, they're all real puppets.
Exactly.
So yeah,
Interesting.
that's the benefit of doing practical.
For sure.
It
for
never
sure.
dates.
I'll be super interested if we ever reach the point where we do get a Farscape analog to that era of space opera, given that
Yeah.
you've more or less caught up or rewatched everything back from that previous era, right?
Yeah.
It'd be super interesting discussion to just kind of see how things have changed in terms of its approach or like the storytelling kind of tropes. Are we still following the same kind of like formula for that? Does it still work in this day and age? All of that would be like a super interesting discussion as and when that one kind of gap has been filled.
Yeah.
I'm still working my way through Stargate SG-1 because that one is
It's
a bit
long.
of a challenge.
Oh yeah.
There's like a dozen seasons
took me
over 2 shows.
Yeah, it took me like months to get through that.
There's fucking Atlantis also out there, the spin-off
Yes.
show,
Oh.
which is
Also-
It was.
it's also quite
Yeah. I mean, like, I did enjoy Atlantis for the times that I kept up with it for maybe like a season or so.
Yeah.
But like SG-1 is a monster of a show, for sure.
It's like the
Yeah,
original
and-
NCIS,
yes.
And then you have NCIS, the spin-offs, right? Or Law and Order and Law and Order spin-offs.
Yeah.
And Stargate also had the unfortunate timing of coming up alongside Battlestar Galactica, the reboot.
Yeah.
When BSG, the reboot, showed us that space operas can be more,
Mhm.
Yep.
and Stargate SG-1 kind of harkened back to the 90s era.
Yeah.
So it felt out of date by the time BSG came out,
Yeah.
and then it lost popularity because of that.
Yeah. I mean, it still hit like 2004, 2005.
That's when BSG started.
Correct, exactly.
Yeah, BSG premiered in 2003,
I
right?
think so, yeah.
Yeah, anyways, we've kind of gotten off topic already. But thanks so much for listening, guys. This has been Hit Zero.
I'm Hadi.
I'm Isa.
Goodbye, y'all.
Bye.
Ciao.